Hi, everybody. Jeff Andrea here with Arkiva, Business Development Manager. Today, I'm back to continue our series, Five Foundations to Improve S&OP. Again, I'm joined by Justin Evilsizer. Justin, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today, Jeff?
Fantastic, man. Thanks for joining me here, Justin. This is part four. Today, we're going to be talking about balancing supply and demand. Very important topic. I know that you're one of our leading experts here in-house. So again, thanks for joining me to talk about it.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Let's dive in.
I have a few questions for you right off the bat here. Can you do me a favor? Can you share me a couple of examples of common challenges companies face at the beginning of this process?
So in my role as a consultant, I've dealt with a lot of different companies, everything from, process high tech, CPG, chemical type of industries. And let me think, one of those prominent examples that comes to mind when I think about trying to balance the difficulties of balancing supply and demand is watching how some of these companies reacted to COVID. Some in the CPG world went from being demand constrained to being supply constrained, and some of the ramifications for that, you've worked so hard in trying to capture accurate real-time data, and you're building your forecast off of your history, and suddenly your history, you can almost throw it out the door, right? That what was true yesterday all of a sudden isn't true today, and how do you react to that? And so in some of these situations, as a consultant, I got to come in and help define new algorithms that properly represented their business. And these things were moving away from historical data and leaning into these external factors that are influencing everything, and just understanding the dynamics of how their industry was changing seemingly overnight. And so, that's one of many of just ways we've run the gamut in dealing with this balance between supply and demand.
Yeah. We see it all the time. There's always this ongoing effort in a lot of companies that don't have tools to balance the supply and demand. And it's an ongoing struggle that's a daily thing. So what are some of the best practices that you're seeing in some of the businesses that we're working with using to continue to balance that supply and demand?
Yeah. Well, if we think about the different challenges that someone might be struggling with, there could be a lack of cross-functional collaboration, that people are working in their different silos and the right information not getting to the right people. Maybe you have, like in my example a moment ago, just an over-reliance on historical data. You don't have any access to real-time information. You're not looking at the market trends. You're not looking at leading indicators and external factors. There can be a lot of different things that you might be saying, what's the primary focus? What do I need to really hone in on? And I would say something that's, been reiterated time and time again in my experience, and that's not to try to boil the ocean. Really want to pick, that one area that is the low-hanging fruit that you can really make some differences in. Let's take, for example, the bullwhip effect. I mentioned that a moment ago. You've got some quick aberrations, some quick change in demand at the retail level, and then that flows back to the DC, and there's an overcorrection, and then that flows back to the manufacturing, and there's an overcorrection over here, right? And just the recoil just gets bigger and bigger. And so you want to mitigate that as you're trying to balance supply and demand. And so we can look at, like, from a low-hanging fruit perspective, if this is your primary concern, then maybe it's doing things like reducing the batch size, from a supply perspective. Maybe it's getting, vendor managed inventory, on your components on the manufacturing side. Maybe on the demand aspect, at the same time, you're looking to aggregate demand in ways that you weren't doing before. So instead of this very noisy look at the granular level, that you're getting this higher level that has a little bit of that sensing and shaping in place, so that it isn't, as knee-jerk of a reaction as you had before. But whether that's your issue, whether it's, working in silos, whatever your area of concern is, it's, again, don't boil the ocean. Find the thing that you're going to be able to work on and make meaningful change. And that's, in my advice, where to focus your primary concern is where you can make the the biggest material change in the shortest amount of time.
Okay, great. Listen, I just want to note that the QR code on the screen, if anybody follows the QR code, it'll take you to the Archiva supply planning page for information regarding supply planning. And then also some additional information is available to you from there as well. So if you follow that, that would be great. Just as we go through this, you and I have been doing this for some time now. I think we've been working together for about a dozen years or so.
Yeah.
And there's things, there's some trends and some current things that companies are using, to do this supply and demand balancing. What are you seeing in with some of our clients? What are they doing these days?
Yeah. I get a little bit of opportunity to talk and meet with customers, and at the same time, I'm always trying to attend the conferences and hear, what are the broader trends and maybe things I don't have access to. What are the things people are talking about that maybe haven't come to pass yet, or what are the recent successes? And so from the perspective of like recent past to like currently ongoing, I see still this continued movement in terms of sustainability, in terms of ethical supply chain practices. A lot of those, times something pops up in the news and that just reminds other companies, right, continue to push for those ethical aspects of your supply chain to make sure, all your sourcing and that sort of stuff is done in a way that's not going to catch you, off guard when something happens in the news. But looking towards the future and what's tomorrow and things like that, COVID really helped us understand some of the ramifications and risks that we weren't properly assessing with our just-in-time approach. I think geopolitical uncertainties are probably more heightened today than they were a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I think there was a relative, period of calmness in the early 2000s and 2010s, and we might not see that again for a while, right? The geopolitical uncertainty is something that we need to take into consideration and properly assess what the risk is. Maybe we were underpricing what some of the costs are when things don't go that way. The other aspect that's, the next cutting edge, it's the big buzzword, of course, is AI and what sort of role AI is going to play in this. We've seen a lot of people just trying to throw things up on the wall with the word AI in there, and we're starting to get a sense of what sort of trends might make long-term inroads that are going to be part of the process going forward. And to me, if we look back the last 10, 15 years, a lot of planners were saying, I'm missing data. I need this data. I want to know about that. And so these data lakes started to soak up, information from everywhere, and we were getting a tremendous overload of data. Now they had so much paralysis analysis was taking hold. They didn't know how to sort through the data. And I think that the next step is AI can play a role in that synthesis. But it's a matter of delegating and finding trust where the model can work. So if you have 1,000 things in front of you, being able to sort most important to least important, and then take the substantial chunk of the low importance items and being able to delegate and synthesize that through AI, through other forms of automation, so that you can focus on just those critical few. That is going to be how AI is able to make significant contributions, I think, in the next phase. Maybe there's future phases that we can't even think about, the sort of technology that might be unlocked. But I think this is a realistic thing that, in the next, potentially the next 12 months to the next, 60 months, maybe 1 to 5 years, that's a reasonable time frame of how I see that playing out.
Fantastic. I didn't ask the audience to post questions, but I've actually received 2 questions that are in here. I'd like to ask you from our audience here. What's the most challenging aspect of balancing supply and demand in your industry, and how do you tackle it?
Okay.
Your industry.
Yeah, it's kind of like what I was talking about earlier. Just my industry being the consulting side of things, just getting to look around and see all these different things going on. If I try to take it from a higher level perspective, no matter the situation, I always kind of come back to people, process, technology. I think we maybe talked about that in one of our previous sit-down discussions. And so these sort of challenges are going to fit into one of these 3 realms, right? From a technology perspective, it might be things like Do you have, Internet of Things types of sensors and stuff to help give you real-time analysis of what's happening, at your inventory level? Do you have real-time information coming from the retail level so that you're getting that, dynamic feedback of what's happening in terms of sales? Are you monitoring the web? If you are something that deals in maybe, fashion or something that's, constantly at the cutting edge of what people's perceptions are you monitoring social media to find out what the sentiment analysis is and feeding that back into, your discovery of market trends and these sorts of things? So, that's the technology side of things. There's the process side of things where maybe you're charged with, improving your consistency between supply and demand. You have your S&OP process in place, but you know where you want to get. And if you're just listening to this, I just want to say a word of encouragement that, keep on keeping on. I know there's turnover. I know there's budget frustrations, and there's, all these things that if you just take one step at a time, it may not seem like much, but when you look back from where we were, 2 years ago, where we were 5 years ago, you'll see, those differences are taking hold. Because I know when we explore a new customer, right, we show them the stair steps of, here's where you could be, where are you right now, so we can know, you may not get to that top of the staircase, immediately, but we can find how to move, the next step along the process.
Absolutely. Incremental improvement is super important to overall strategy and growth. So thanks for that answer. And there's one more here, and then I'm gonna let you go, Justin.
Okay.
How do you see the role of automation evolving in the supply-demand balance?
Well, I think I hit on that a little bit earlier about the about automating that part. Let's continue on that and maybe just talk about trust. If you're using automation to, do your segmentation analysis for you, and you've, partitioned out, what are your high profitable items, what are your A customers, what are the areas that of most meaningfulness to you, and then you take that as an input into something like, a scatter plot of forecastability. Maybe you come up with a 4-quadrant analysis where you've got things that are, highly forecastable, difficult to forecast, but important for the business, so from a profitability perspective, from a customer satisfaction perspective. And so once you've done this sort of like premeditative analysis of the data, and you've got, you now know what is critical, and then you also know what's secondary, and you want to, hone your attention on the areas where human intelligence can provide the most, value, whether that's your sales representatives who are on the phone with the customers and know what's going to happen, whether that is knowledge of an impending, shutdown from a production perspective, labor shortages, right? You know better what's coming up than this, predictive model might be able to do. This automation aspect is going to be focused squarely on that quadrant, and these quadrants might not be equal size. This might be the lion's share, where it's those secondary things where forecastability level is high, and criticalness to the business might be medium, might be low, so that you can just relieve yourself of just so much of just the bombardment of data, so that you can stay on those critical items and keep those A customers as happy as you can.
Well, that's really important. So Justin, thank you for sharing not only your experiences with us, but some of your insights that you've learned over the years as well. So these are all great pieces of information that we've put together here for this series, 5 Foundations to Improve S&OP, and we'll continue this series next week. And we look forward to seeing you there. Justin, again, thank you very much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Take care, Jeff.